Jusant is a short 4-hour indie adventure where you take control of a boy and his companion climbing a mountain. It's a simple game where the player tries to unlock the mysteries of what happened to the mountain and its denizens. I initially saw a showcase of this game at the 2023 Xbox Game Showcase and wanted to try it out. The showcase gave off a similar vibe to other short adventure games like Journey and Abzu, but unfortunately Jusant fell short of my expectations and in my opinion failed to capture a true sense of adventure. Hello everyone, welcome to the CTGamingLab. I'm going to show you how the first 2.5 hours of Jusant was for me, and at the end give you a breakdown summary of pros and cons and how I felt about the game. Like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. The beginning of the game started off interestingly enough. A short cinematic plays panning the landscape and leads into you taking control of your character. The controls are simple. I played on a controller as recommended by the game. Left and right triggers are used as extensions of the player's arms. Hold the right trigger to grab something with the right hand, and then move the joystick to move the left arm around and vice versa. There is a very forgiving stamina bar that rarely threatens full depletion, so this made the climbing feel relatively stress-free and unchallenging. The most restricting mechanic was a safety harness rope length. If you go too far without finding a place to retract your rope and connect it to a new starting point, it will prevent you from going any farther. It took a little getting used to, but once I got it, it was a pretty interesting climbing system. Left, right, left, right, left, right, to climb indicated spots on walls or ladders. You'll learn to double jump, wall run, and swing very quickly, and the game doesn't add too many new movement mechanics after you learn these basics. While I was on my climbing journey, I came across notes and letters scattered around. Discoverable lore. I personally love environmental storytelling in most games, but Jusant fell short for me in this aspect. It became apparent to me that the story in Jusant was very hard to follow and often felt non-existent. The notes and letters all gave the same message. There used to be people who lived here, there was a drought, and now they're all gone. Given the lack of an understanding I had about why I was climbing this mountain, I did start to feel lost. Even outside the story of the mountain, it would have been interesting to understand the world beyond it. Why was there a drought? Why are we climbing this mountain? Where are we going? Who is my character? Who are the people who lived here and what do they look like? I had a lot of questions like these go unanswered while playing the game. Now these unanswered questions caused me to lose interest in exploration. Note that exploration and the desire to discover was a big expectation I had going into the game. What else would a meditative mountain climbing game be about? The game does have an abundance of explorable nooks and crannies filled with notes and interactables, and as far as I'm aware, there are also different routes you can take to climb the mountain. There are certainly moments where I would look down after climbing and be greeted with a really nice view. These moments were unfortunately far and few between. The issue I felt was that there was little to no incentive really to explore different routes and go looking for notes and interactables. These interactables and notes were small and felt unrewarding, and at least for me, the value offered by reading yet another note about how the residents had to move because of a drought, or putting a rock on a rock tower was just not worth exploring. Finding a tuck-away room that lights up when I use my companion pulse, it felt more like a waste of time. And lastly, while there are different routes and paths up the mountain you can take, I didn't really have a reason to backtrack unless I accidentally found a path that led to a tuck-away room and realized it wasn't a vertical progression path. Again, this felt more like an inconvenience than a discovery. So with exploration feeling like a back burner aspect of the game, the fun factor was left to the raw climbing mechanics. This fun factor had an ebb and flow to it. Whenever I would start to get bored, I would finish a chapter of the game. Being introduced to a new zone gave me a sense of, oh yay, a new area! But then it quickly became, okay, we're still basically climbing the same way we've been climbing the whole time. Now, I do want to be fair to the game. In every chapter, they did technically introduce a new mechanic. The companion had a pulse ability that affected the wildlife. Plant vines and plant spuds grew to create new climbable paths. Little rock creatures crawled on the walls to create moving dynamic paths. You could stop these moving rocks with the companion pulse, and these new mechanics offered a short burst of enjoyment, which quickly led into the same feeling of monotony. The growing vines and moving creatures are essentially just mobile handholds and offer no real change to the core gameplay loop. The game would have greatly benefited here, in my opinion, by introducing new challenge mechanics, falling stalactite, more frequent crumbling handholds, and paths with less stamina checkpoints. The game can maintain simple mechanics while keeping the player engaged with external challenges. So, with no incentive to explore, being bored by the same notes, and no engaging challenges changing the core gameplay loop, these main things are what eventually made me put down my controller and call it for a first impression review. Let's come to the end here, and I'll list some pros and cons in bullet points, and some of these will be notes I made but couldn't really fit them into the video fluidly. Let's go ahead and start with the pros. It's a somewhat unique genre. If you have an itch for playing a mountain climbing game, I personally haven't seen another one that is quite literally just that. It's a relaxing game, so it's very atmospheric and serene in nature, and along that same line of thought, the music when it's playing is very peaceful. I'm a big sucker for good audio, and the music in Jusant fits it very well. In fact, the music you've been listening to in the background has been the main menu music for Jusant. The game doesn't overstay its welcome. I completed the first impressions of the game in about 2.5 hours and did end up completing the entire game in 3.5 hours. The game is very simple and has easy to learn mechanics, and it has a very clean and simple UI. Something I always enjoy about these atmospheric games is that the UI is often very decluttered. It's a nice breakaway from the constant stimulation that we experience in our lives. So with the pros out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to the cons. First off, the story felt really non-existent. While I did not read all of them, even when reading the letters left behind, I felt they barely developed a full picture of what was happening. The gameplay is monotonous. Due to a lack of challenge, I always felt like I just played left and right trigger simulator. There were frequent, small but noticeable performance drops, and note that I do play on a high-end PC. And lastly, there was no real incentives to explore, and from my experience, all interactables felt very pointless. So the pros and cons out of the way, overall I just want to say that Jusant is a very down-to-earth game with simple climbing mechanics and a simple atmospheric vibe. If you're looking for a short, chill gaming experience about climbing a mountain, this may be the game for you. Personally, I found the lack of a clear story off-putting, and ultimately started glancing through the set-piece letters. I found the whole gameplay loop monotonous and it got stale fairly quickly, and if there were more engaging / challenging climbs and a more fleshed out story, this game had the potential to really wow people. At the end of the day, these are just my thoughts and experiences with the game. Some may play Jusant and have enjoyed it much more than I did, which is completely fair. I'm curious about how you all feel about the game though, so tell me about that in the comments. Do you think I was too harsh on the game or could have been harsher? And as always, thank you all for watching this first impressions video. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a great day.